This episode is general information only. Full disclaimers in the notes.
G'day, Josh. How are you?
I'm good, mate. How are
That's the
you?
way. Yeah, well, feeling it, mate. Feeling it. Big night. I am, had a big night for a 50th last night. Fantastic night with friends, etc. Stoked to be here on the Steak Dinner Pod with Josh Peterson, where the convos are rare, the takes are well done, and nothing is off the table.
Nothing is off the table. This is true. We've got a lot to cover up. This is an episode we've been looking forward to, right, mate?
Yeah, mate. Yep.
Absolutely.
So we're here to do financial first aid to stop the bleeding straight after separation or during. Yeah, and mate, why are we doing this financial survival episode for blokes?
It's a good question. I think, money's not everything, but it's certainly an important topic, and it's even more important when you're going through separation or a major life change where you kind of have to recalibrate. So it's a really good opportunity to reset and really take hold of your financial position. I think a lot of people that are going through these types of stresses and changes tend to look away from their finances because it is a hard pill to swallow. It's not an exciting conversation. No one likes looking at their balance sheet and their budgets and things like that. But this is a really important time to recall down and understand where you are right now, because in order to move forward, you've really got to understand that current state position.
Mate, well, we're here to help blokes get back on their feet and become their best selves, knowing that everything's temporary. Everything's temporary. So, and for everyone, we started this pod to make sure that blokes knew that there were other people out there going through the same thing. And we wanted to share what sort of your experiences, my experiences, and the rest of it. But really so that guys can get something out of this, that they can action quickly and hopefully feel better about themselves. And look, guys, if there's anything that you want to put in the pod, in comments or something like that, send them through. We actually love getting them. Josh usually replies, not me, but it's very good of you, mate. Mate, let's start with it. So starting with the separation, what's the big thing that sort of people or blokes get wrong during, after a breakup?
I think from my own experience and from what I've seen around the town in terms of my mates and family, because it is such an emotional time, we tend to look for things that are going to lift us up. And that normally means a lot of emotional spending. And I'm the same. I'm a consumerist. And it's one of those things when you are feeling a little bit down, a little bit low, a little bit depressed, it's very easy to pull out that credit card and look for that next shiny toy that is going to bring you what you perceive to be at the time a lot of joy. But it's really just a lot of distraction, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the same for anyone, right? They drop money whenever you're feeling a bit down. You drop money to feel better about yourself sometimes, and send yourself out for a bit of entertainment or drinking or
Yeah. And
or buy yourself something good, new surfboard, whatever it is.
definitely. And there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm not against it. It's just about the timing of the expense when you're going through a transition and you really need to take hold of your finances. So it's not a case of no, it's just a case of sometimes when we do these things and how we do these things, and making sure when we do these things that we're exercising good judgment along the
Mate,
way.
you were telling me the other day about joint bank accounts and what can happen, what can go wrong if you do have one with your ex. Do you want to elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, one of the issues, and I've seen this play out personally, and I've seen it play out to people that are close in my life. You've got these joint bank accounts, which are fine in principle, that most couples do have these joint bank accounts. However, when you're going through that period of separation and the mechanics of moving out and resetting, those accounts become very high risk because they're really honeypots for the other person, and you've got a lot of cash flow there potentially for the other person to dig into. And if it's not joint signatories, it's very easy for your ex to go in there and sweep those accounts. And then it's quite the battle trying to get that money back. So definitely joint accounts. You have to look where you've got money jointly, and then consider what is the best approach for managing those joint accounts. And as an example, and I think we need to reiterate, none of this is advice. These are just things to consider based on our own lived experiences, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
but definitely something to consider. An example might be if you've got joint bank accounts, take your half, put it into your own bank account, and it kind of de-risks you when you do things like that. So these are the things that you kind of need to consider around joint
Needs to be the
account.
same thing for a credit card, right? Like if you've got joint credit cards or secondary credit cards and those sort of things,
Yes.
usually you've got them set up with auto debits. So, and I was just thinking to myself, most people go through a separation or divorce or something, it's 50-50. But
Yeah.
if it's 60-40, may feel like you're getting better off, that if
Mhm.
you buy something, it's like getting a 60% discount. Your
Yeah,
ex,
definitely.
your ex is paying, but on credit cards are those things that also both parties can sort of get themselves in trouble.
Yeah, definitely. Or all it takes if you've got joint credit cards, if one person is undisciplined or they think this is a good opportunity for me to rack up expenses, knowing that the debt of those expenses is going to be incurred mutually. Back to what you're saying, it's like a 50% discount. And then, when the credit card companies are chasing the debt, they're not just chasing your ex, they're chasing you as well. So, and these are
Yeah.
very high interest debts, sometimes, 20 plus percent. So, definitely things you want to be careful of: cash flow and debt. Yeah.
And once they're run up on a credit card, like what are you going to do? If you don't pay it off, then you get a mark on your credit score. So that can affect you down the line for, if this is only temporary, what you're going through is a separation. When you make your way out of it, you come out with whatever share of your matrimonial estate. Plus, you actually come out with your credit score. So if you haven't been paying your credit cards, that's on your mark. Like that is on your record for
Yeah.
a long time.
It's exactly. And this is why it's really important to take stock of your financials early, understand what your full financial position is in terms of assets, liabilities, cash flow, all of your accumulated debts, and your credit score. Because really, to your point, when you are going through that rebuild phase, that's the thing that is going to be really important, particularly when you want to leverage properties or leverage debt. That credit score is going to be critical doing any of those things.
Okay. So let's say a guy's just separating now. What's the first thing that they should do when they've just moved out? What do you reckon? What do you recommend?
Well, I think for me, the common sense thing to do, and the thing that I try to do straight away, is just do a full reconciliation of everything. So I went to the banks, all my bank accounts, printed off the last 3 months statements, because I just wanted to know, firstly, I wasn't trying to repair anything. I was just trying to understand my financial position, because I can't make decisions without having all the information in front of me. So that's a really important step. It's not a nice step, I'll be honest with you. No one likes going through and reconciling their bank statements, particularly when they're struggling financially. So it's not an exciting thing to do, but it's a necessary thing that you need to do. Whilst it's uncomfortable, it's something that people should be facing into. So I would consider doing a full reconciliation of my last 3 months bank statements, pulling out all those expenses, and then categorizing those. What's essential, what's discretionary, what is batshit crazy purchases, what are the emotional spends. And then that should give you a pretty good view. And then obviously balance that against any sort of cash flow that you've got coming in, whether it be through your.
You've got to expect that you're sinking straight out of the gate. You're taking on, an extra rental, let's say, more expenses straight out of the gate. So you've really got to try to drill down on where you are as a position and then make your decisions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And a lot of blokes don't really take stock of the reality of what their short-term future state's going to look like when they move out.
Mm.
They're not considering the fact that they could have two properties that they need to pay off. Moving out of a place doesn't relinquish you from the debt. If you've got a mortgage, if it's in both your names, you still are responsible for that debt, even though you're not living there. Plus, you're probably going to have a rental expense. If you need to rent out and get a small studio or something like that, and they're large expenses. These are not coffee lunch expenses. These are full mortgage repayments, probably one of the biggest repayments that you're going to have. Car repayments as well. If you've got joint car ownership, those debts still need to be paid. So there's lots to consider there. There's the child support. We'll go into that a little bit later. Again, that's another big expense that a lot of blokes aren't considering when they move out of home. And that's going to be a debt that you will incur very quickly once you leave.
So basically, do the budget, like work through your current expenses on your credit card and your savings account or whatever it is. Do it up as an Excel sheet or something. That's probably
Yeah.
how I would do it, and then go from there. Or there's probably
Yeah.
software for this.
Yeah, I think so. Once you've got the reconciliation done and you know exactly where your money's going, and this is the opportunity to start doing a budget based on critical needs, go there first and then look at your discretionary spending. You mentioned spreadsheets. That's a great way to do it. I've tried a lot of different apps and iNabs and pocketbooks. There's a lot of resources out there. There's Money Smart, so there's government resources as well. You can really dive deep into these apps, but at the end of the day, I've tried them all and I always tend to go back to basics because you don't need the bells and whistles. You just need line items. You need to know your current position. And sometimes I find this myself, sometimes the more you invest into tools, it's like a form of procrastination.
Yeah. Okay.
Keep it as simple as possible because that's going to be an easy system for you to follow down the track.
Right. Okay. So we've done the budgeting, and now we want to probably put a tourniquet on it and stop the bleeding. So how do you stop bleeding the cash?
Well, I think you just have to really take a good hard look at yourself and you need to understand needs and wants. So I think men need to go back to basics. They need to cut out all of the non-essential expenses, but do it with the right mindset. Do it with a mindset where this is a short-term pain. You are trying to rebuild yourself. It is not forever. There is a lot of areas that you can really extinguish a lot of expenses, particularly things like eating out. That's a big one for me. I spend a lot of money monthly eating out,
For sure.
If I was to add that
Or
up,
takeaway.
a takeaway, Uber Eats, all those types of things, they're handy, they're convenient, they're delicious, but it's it's not going to be more nutritious than making food at home, and it's going to be a quarter of the cost. We need to start looking at things like takeout. How much alcohol are you drinking? How many subscriptions have you got?
All of them.
All of, I've got most of them. But
Yeah.
again, we talk about streaming services as an example. Netflix, great. Do you need Netflix, Stan, Prime, Hulu, and Binge as well?
You said something to me once before about you can cancel all these things, but you've got kids still in the matrimonial house, maybe, and you're out somewhere. You said that you don't really want to shoot yourself in the foot with these things. You've got to think about what's the value you and your kids get out of something. So if they come over and do a movie night or something like that on you, every fortnight or something, well, then that's money well spent, right? $20 or whatever it is these
Yeah,
days.
it is. It is. And it's not about saying no. It's the assessment is about what value does that bring to your life. And if it brings a nice night with your kids over a homemade bowl of spaghetti, that's a good night. That's an investment into you, into your family. And for $20, for sure. It's all about, do the kids need Prime as well? Do they need Stan? Do they need 5 of these streaming services for you guys to be able to have a good evening?
You said about the fun dad spending trap once before?
Yeah. This is a tough one because it's based on guilt, Kieran. You feel guilty because you've split up. you're feeling for your kids. You feel like you failed your kids. Any parent that doesn't feel like that, I'd be scratching my head. It's natural. How do you not feel like that when these types of things happen, right? So, because of that guilt, you tend to try and overcompensate. How do you overcompensate? You try to give them everything. It's like, well, I couldn't give you a home with two parents, so let me buy you the best bike I can buy you.
So it's
Right.
irrational, but
It's
it's
irrational, and you think that you're buying the kids back somehow, or
yeah,
that you're going to make things better for your kids. If I just give them a heap of stuff and really good stuff, they'll feel better about the situation because I'm giving them all this stuff. And you're going to realize that it's absolutely going to do nothing for your relationship with your kids. The things that will provide for your kids are the time and the consideration and just being there emotionally for them as well.
yeah, not on your phone. Don't be on your phone whilst you're meant to be with the kids, right? So,
Don't be on your phone
and that's a guilt
unless you're
thing
playing an
for
online
every.
game, Kieran. If you're playing an online, like if I'm playing flappy golf with my kids, yeah, I'm on the
Yeah.
phone, but I'm beating them. I'm beating them at the game. That's what I'm doing at flappy golf. So yeah, but you're right. In principle, try and stay off those things when you're engaged with your kids. And it doesn't take a lot. You don't need to spend big for your kids to get enjoyment.
I reckon yeah, yeah. I was going to say, I reckon one of the best things to stop your spending is
Mm.
try to sell things that you have in the house. Because as soon as you sell something that you've got in the house that you valued at, I don't know, a couple of grand, like maybe a bike or something like that,
Yeah.
or a $500 bike, you go to sell it. You of a Facebook marketplace, it's worth $50. That's all someone's going to pay for it. And that
Yeah.
sort of stops you. You go, wow, what am I doing spending money on things that really have no value beyond a certain point?
Yeah.
So,
That was pretty cute that you thought a $500 bike was a big spend. You obviously haven't brought a bike for like 20
no,
years. 500, well, 500 will get you a bike that weighs about 40 kilos.
that's a kid's
That will
bike.
have two,
Yeah.
that will have two gears on it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Fair enough.
you've cut me deep there, Kieran, because I did buy the smart trainer, the Wahoo smart trainer, thinking that I was going to be this indoor cycling athlete, and I got the best smart trainer I could absolutely find, and yeah, I've used it probably about 10 times in 3 years.
But to your
Mm.
credit, you do ride to work on your
But
electric bike
and
a couple of times a week. So there's some value and you're getting a bit of exercise and things like
that's
that. So,
right.
some things have value, right?
Some
So
things have
that's good.
like so and it's that's a great point. The e-bike cost me a couple of grand, but I use
Mm,
it all the time and it
mm,
saves me in commuting costs and things like that. The
yeah.
other smart trainer with the bike, that cost me about 4 to 5 grand to set up. And I hardly touch it.
Yeah.
So one was a good investment. The other one was horrible. I'll
But you
keep it there
haven't
because it
sold it
looks
yet.
great. It
Maybe that's
looks
something
great
you
in
can
the
do this
garage.
weekend,
Looks
JP.
fantastic. Sorry.
Hey, mate. Okay. Now, so we've sort of done some steps, know where you are, then stopping the bleed, or sorry, budgeting, obviously, and then stopping the bleed, and then,
Can I add one point on stopping the
yeah,
bleed just quickly?
yeah, sure.
Cash is king. If you really
Yeah.
want to stop spending, carry around cash.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a lot harder to spend money when you're pulling notes out of an envelope.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So if something costs you
Rather than tapping your
500,
debit card. Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
It's a lot easier to tap than pull out $10, $50 notes for something. It's just
Yep.
it hits you differently. It hits you viscerally. It hits you and I'm not saying you won't do it, but it will really bring home the value of what you're purchasing. And the other thing I would say to that, have a 7-day rule. If you like something, don't do the splurging. Don't just decide in that moment that you're going to drop 500 on something that you just caught your eye. Take a 7-day rule where you're like, if I really want this, I'm going to come back in 7 days and I'm going to
Hmm.
get it.
Okay.
That and a lot of the times, once all that novelty and all the dopamine rush is gone, it won't seem as valuable once you distance yourself from that particular thing.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. So, Mate, so now how do we deal with the debt side of it? So most people have, I don't know, credit card, car, mortgage, let's say. They're probably the big three. There's probably others. You got any tips there? What do you think?
Well, first thing is know what your debt is, and then look
Yep.
at what's yours, what's joint debt. Have an open, honest conversation with your ex partner if you do have joint debt around how you're going to manage that debt, at least for the interim, or whether you're going to try and extinguish that debt. But that needs to be a conversation. If you're at that point where you can have those mature conversations, but certainly that's the best way to do it. Look at if you've got mortgage offsets, you want to try and lock those down. Look at if you're paying principal and interest loans, you might want to consider things like talking to the bank and asking them for some mortgage relief, going interest only for an interim period of time, those types of things. These are all conversations that you really want to have first with your partner, or your ex-partner, I should say. Ideally, and I keep going back to this, have the conversations before you go.
Before you
Don't
leave the
just,
house.
yes, have them before you leave the house. Have a really clear understanding about what you're going to do with your debt, what you're going to do with your cash, what you're going to do with child support obligations, how you're going to juggle both the expenses, how they're going to contribute. Because if you don't do any of that and you leave the house, you are gone and you've got no leverage. You being in that house is the only leverage you've got to have those conversations and land on whatever you need to land on that's going to help you out. But that's going to go as soon as you go.
But we can unpack that as well. But I was going to say, like, if once you've left and you go, okay, making these rational decisions, okay, we've got to split the joint account and close those and close credit cards. Like when you're living in separate houses, it's probably pretty, like everything would be assumed that the other party is doing this just to get me, right? Just to inflict damage on me, when it might be the rational thing, but where you're not talking about it before you leave, then they have no other thought. Like that's going to be the thought process, that is the reason why this particular decision is made.
I agree. I think when you're still in the house together, even though you're fighting, when you're talking about, from what I've experienced and what I've seen, the calmest things are going to be is at the start. And then it'll fall off the cliff eventually.
Yeah.
Not everybody, but when you've got kids, it's very hard for it not to fall off the cliff because there's so many things to consider and you're just not going to agree. Right. So use that opportunity while you're still together, while things are still calm, to work through things calmly and pragmatically. Because once it becomes very emotional, people will start making emotional decisions. And that's when people cut off their nose to spite their face, or one party will try and drown you in legal fees just to drown you in legal fees. And they're happy to drown themselves in legal fees. And you think to yourself, hang on, we could have spent that $70,000 on the kids.
Yeah.
Now it's going to lawyers. So
Yeah.
try and have those conversations calmly, rationally, and early.
Yeah. Fair enough,
Yeah.
mate. So we know where we stand. We've done the budgeting basics. We've stopped the bleed. We're now, we've finished off the debt, that closing joint accounts and excess credit cards and things like that. And knowing that those debts, when you separate, are still yours. Anything you've signed is on you, right? You are
Absolutely.
responsible, and that's on your credit score going forward if it's not paid. So next one probably is a big one that I don't know much about, would be the child support 101s. Like, what are we talking there? What does child support actually cover, and what are the ways you can negotiate it? What are the ways?
Yeah. So child support agency, or it's really the mechanism that parents use to create an arm's length relationship between you and your ex. And they're all about how do we ensure that the children in that relationship are being looked after. And that they're receiving the right amount of income per month, depending upon the situation of both parties. So it's really about providing an equitable solution that's in the best interest of the kids based on the financial situations of each person. So
And
generally
what is the
it's
DOP?
it includes the basics, housing, food, clothing. It doesn't cover things like, the children's private school fees or sports or extracurricular activities. It's really just to cover the basics. If you want to go beyond that, you can, but you're looking at more of a private arrangement. And they're going to look at things when they're making that determination. They're going to look at things like your income. That's the biggest driver in terms of working out. So your exes and your income. And then they're going to offset that against the amount of care that you've got for the children. So the person that has the most care will get the most financial support, generally speaking.
When you're talking financial support, that's actually payment from one party to the other party, right?
Through
So,
child support.
yeah, so you've got to physically pay that like direct debit or BPay, or
So,
how does you pay this?
so okay. So
And
there's
this
a
is
few.
Australian based, we should say at the
This is
start of
this is
this.
this is Australian based, and it's not alimony. This is not to support the partner. This is to support the child of the relationship. So what they'll do is they're going to look at generally your last tax return for both parties. Okay, and they'll apply that. Generally, it's guys that end up paying their ex-wives child support, and the reason being is that most of the time the mother has got most of the day-to-day care of the children. So in my situation, I've mentioned a few episodes back. I saw the kids every second weekend. So my ex-wife had the kids 84% of the time. When you've got an 84% care percentage and they look at your income, then you're going to owe money to child support to help support your ex-wife in supporting your children.
Yeah. Okay. So that part around you're paying for just the housing, food and clothing, and then like you're still going to be, well, like, if you're sending your kids to the private school or you're doing the sport on the weekend and you've got to do their registration, if you can figure out their websites for soccer, etc. So then you just pay those things directly. You don't pay that to your spouse. You just pay that direct, right?
It depends. You need to have these arrangements in place, right? And that could be court-ordered arrangements where they look at the financial side. It could be by way of agreement between both parties with child support. This is where I think you should be seeking some sort of counsel, professional counsel from either
Yeah, that's a
a
good point.
lawyer.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so we're at professional help, right? So it sounds like this is the point when you need to get it, or you could have started this process at step one if you wanted to get legal advice, but without knowing where you are at the point, what's it going to
Yeah,
help?
exactly.
So
Because you don't know how simple or complicated your affairs are until you see them right on a spreadsheet. And then that will help you to determine. And you need to look at sometimes couples don't have a lot of these extracurricular things. They aren't going to private schools. It's a lot easier.
mm, yeah,
But certainly some couples will find that the private arrangements work for them because they can go up and down and it's flexible. It's not involving government agencies in their personal business. That's another thing. But the
okay, yep.
benefits of going through child support is it does create that arm's length relationship. And I think that's important to get that for a
That's
lot of
actually
people.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good because you're paying it to a third party and they're distributing it to your ex-spouse, right? So versus you making it, so you've got all these other contact, you've already got enough contact points with the kids
Yes.
that you have to work out. Now you've also got money to sort out as well. It's another thing.
And it goes back to what we probably mention at least once in every podcast. You're trying to change this into a business relationship. Child support allows that because you're not having that one-on-one interaction. You're creating arm's length relationships by using agencies that are there to help you and to do that. And if money is owed, it's not the wife texting the husband, why aren't you paying the child support? It'll be child support will know and say, you need to pay money.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I'm going to send a letter to your employer and we're going to garnish your wages. And if we don't do that, another option might be we'll just sweep your bank accounts and take the money.
yeah. So,
So all
mate,
those things.
so you said before to get professional support. Is there anyone that you recommend or places you can go or something like that?
I would encourage people to go online. Again, we're not giving advice here, but go online, simple Google searches. Try to look for services that are cost effective, things that are free services through the government, or they're heavily subsidized by the government to allow you, you might be entitled to free legal care. Certainly get yourself down to Centrelink, because
Yep.
you're in a new situation. You might be dead broke in between jobs. You might be entitled to some sort of additional support. It might be rent support. It might be other types of support. If you're the primary carer, you might be entitled. Sometimes the guys are primary carers. You might be entitled to family part A or B. So ring around, make those calls, and investigate what's there to help you first. Preferably look for those free or low cost options, and then move your way up to professional paid help.
Once before, we've talked about, making sure that you get the mental health support you need. You said once before that if you go to your GP, they've got some sort of referral
Yeah,
process,
you
or
can get mental health plans, provided you meet the criteria. They'll do an assessment with you that will allow you to have pretty heavily subsidized psychology sessions, which will be probably over 50% discounted. So a lot
okay.
of savings there. I don't know a huge amount about it, but I know it exists, and I know that it's heavily subsidized. So certainly look at
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Look at your work, look at your employee assistance programs. If you're in a workplace that does offer that, certainly I would consider that,
Yep.
because why not, right? These are
Yeah, for
tools,
sure.
they're
Yeah.
free, they're subsidized. Don't spend more than you have to. Just be smart about it. Do your own research, and a simple Google search will probably uncover a lot of this stuff.
Okay. So, all right. So we've done all that. And now the last part of it, I guess, is, what if a bloke wants to learn but doesn't know where to start?
Well, I think that I'd be looking at resources like you've got Money Smart. They've got a whole website filled with information that can help support. So have a look there, have a look at the different categories, have a look at their education, all their tools. Spend the time investing into making yourself familiar with that and understanding what your financial rights are. Look for that, legal aid. See if that's an option based on your current situation. Look at those things. I would definitely stay off websites like Reddit. So
Yep.
I would try and stay away from those threads. A lot of that is ridiculous. Putting it bluntly, you get all these bush lawyers that go on there, and then government resources, because they've just got all the control and the governance around the information. And then if your budget affords, I would certainly seek legal advice, even if it's just a couple of sessions, just to put you in the right frame and doing the right things. So try and get a hold of a financial advisor, a lawyer, etc., and then just kind of work through your list.
Probably also talk to some of your trusted mates who've been through it. They'll probably have some good ideas on how to learn and what they've gone through. So that's also there's a bit of self education. So mate, if someone's drowning in this stuff, like as soon as they get out, there is so many things to consider. What are, let's just say, two actions that they can do this week, and then what's next?
Yeah, go back to basics. Print off a few months' bank statements, credit card statements, and build your budget. Try to understand what your needs, wants, and debts are, right? Do it over a glass of wine. I like a glass of red wine when I'm on the spreadsheet. And then the other thing I would suggest, just to get things moving, look at something to cut and look at something to sell. Yeah. Find one line item that you can cut, and then look around for something that you can sell that's not, as Marie Kondo would say, giving you joy anymore. Yeah. Give it a little kiss and send it on its way. Thank the item for its service, and keep moving on. That's what I would suggest, as a first step.
One I'd also say is make sure, like if you've moved out or you're about to move out, make sure you update your will and your power of attorney.
Yes.
These things are important
Yes.
in a married situation. If you don't have a will, there's legal ramifications, and vice versa. They don't
Yep.
automatically stop. So make sure you get your will and power of
Yep.
attorney done.
Certainly. I think that's part of the rebuild, Kieran. I would say absolutely that's a critical step. I think, though, we want to focus on the financial bleed, and I think we'll cover off
Yep.
the wheels and things like that. I think that's part of the rebuild. It's more of a medium-term strategy, but really just want to get a hold of that spending at the start.
Perfect, mate. Well, thanks, JP. There's a quick one. We've done a quick pod for once.
I know, I know. These are hard topics, and you don't know what the right time is, because there's so much information out there, and you give people as much information as possible. But we understand the guys are, our audience. They're time poor. They're probably listening to this at the gym on their commute to work. So we just want to get the information in front of them. So we're going to endeavor, in these future sessions, maybe just cut to the point a little bit more, be respectful of people's time, and then we'll see how we go and see how the audience responds to the more condensed format.
Yeah, well, thanks for the financial first aid, mate. Appreciate it. And we'll catch you next week, mate. And we'll probably go into what super, your net worth, saving, investing, those sort of
Yeah,
things.
we'll look at the rebuild stuff. Let's look at how do we move from financial triage to really start to have a game plan to rebuild yourself for the future.
If there's anything, any questions or comments or anything else that people want to make, please do so. And Josh
Yes.
replies to everyone, which is very nice of him. Thanks,
Yeah,
JP.
and please, my pleasure. And don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. I feel like a teenager saying that, but it does help the algorithm, does help build up our channel, and really gets our voice out there to as many people as possible. So thanks everyone for listening. We appreciate it.
Thanks, JP. All right, mate. See you later.
Take
Have a
care.
good day. See you, buddy.
This episode is general information only. Full disclaimers in the notes.